Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up today, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two early pioneers of digital music, guys who've been friends and business partners for years, and also two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in this crazy business of music. I promise you will leave today thinking, wow, who knew? And you'll also leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And please ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure that your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, and Better Than Booze. Let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back my friend and two-time guest on this platform, Richard Gottehrer. The song is where it all starts, and within a minute of speaking to Richard, co-founder and chief creative officer of The Orchard, there is no doubt in your mind that you are talking to a musical legend, a true visionary who has used the power of a song to navigate through many chapters of his career, from composing and producing hit songs such as My Boyfriend's Back, I Want Candy, and Sorrow, to co-founding Sire Records with Seymour Stein, to producing hits with acts like Blondie, Richard Hell, Robert Gordon with Link Ray, the Go-Go's, and beyond that, straight to founding of The Orchard. He's done it all, and he has all the stories to prove it. Welcome back, my friend. Great to see you, Richard.
Thank you. Thanks,
and
Tom.
joining Richard is Scott Cohen. Scott joined Jukebox in 2022 as founding chief executive officer and investor. One of the industry's most notable pioneers, Scott co-founded The Orchard, the world's first musical digital distributor. Established in 1997, The Orchard, now owned by Sony Music, gave independent artists and labels a platform to sell their music to mainstream audiences, and has since become the leading distribution company with 45 offices worldwide. He retired from The Orchard in 2019 and joined Warner Music Group as its first ever Chief Innovation Officer, a role uniquely tailored to his expertise. Not only is Scott a proponent of new technology and innovation in the industry, but he also carries this through to his personal life. He's a cyborg, human rights activist, and has been a vegan for the past 25 years. Gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you both. Please take it away.
Well, thanks for the intro.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
So that's it. You back out. It's up to us. We hijacked the show.
This is your show.
I'm going to keep talking because I think my camera went off.
No, your camera's on. I see you.
You see me, but
I see you. I'm looking at the chat. I see loads of people making comments already.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't see you. But anyway.
You don't see me.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Truly, I'm here.
Let me get this straight.
No, we're live. There's no getting it straight. Go.
Wait, I'm getting help here. Getting assistance.
No, you can't wait. We're live.
Okay, so here we go. So Scott, it was it was like amazing how we met. You know, I mean, this has been a long time, and look at what's happened. I mean, I'm sitting now in the Orchard offices, the executive suite, and you know, in a nice luxury type situation. And you and I, we started a storefront. You remember?
No, Richard, we started so much before that. So I mean, maybe the Orchard started in the storefront, but so I wish I remembered the exact date. I don't even remember the month, but I remember it was 1995. I had an office on 18 West 27th Street. It was Chris Apostolou and I. We had this office where we had this
Chris is there. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris, we had this music management company and that we shared with a Spanish TV production company. And one day, Chris and I were out to some important business meeting. We were just out of the office, but we had an intern. What was his name? Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Eric Brunman, I think was his name. And I came back to the office and he said, oh, you got this message from this guy, Richard G, and he butchered your name. And he said he's some producer, he's done stuff. And I was like, I never heard of your name. Sorry, Richard, never heard of you. And it was 1995, so I couldn't even Google you. But he did get your number right. And I remember I called you back, and that was when we first met. It wasn't, I mean, storefronts came much later. Like,
oh, I remember, and I remember the band,
Rob.
Yeah, and then you came up to the Upper West Side, and with my wife Anita and me and you.
We had lunch in that corner.
Yeah, in the corner of it's a restaurant right on the corner of 77th Street and Columbus Avenue.
And you were going to produce this artist. We were going to get him signed. Don Rubin from EMI put it all together, and all that went to shit. So instead, we started a record label.
So instead, we started a record label. Yeah, we were going to do a production deal with.
And it was you, me, Chris, Tim Stickelbrooks, and Jim Riley.
And Jim Riley was.
He didn't last. Jim Riley didn't last that long.
Yeah, yeah. And then we had, and then we went to the Lower East Side, and we had an apartment, but it was like a studio apartment. We had offices, and then you found a place in the Lower East Side, Orchard Street. Yeah.
And I remember. So I think it was Chris that found the office, and this is even before we were the Orchard, where there was just the label. And I remember you said, I'm never going there. Like, you weren't going to go below Houston Street. And you said, you can get an office there, but I'm never going down to that dump.
It was a dump. It was nice, but it was a dump. And you had your cats, and the cats ran around. But what we did do is we had a couple of big full screen, old style, well, they were new style then, computers. And that's what sort of opened the gates for us. You know, we started running messages on the computers. This is pre-broadband, talking to people who had bands similar to the ones we were releasing.
Yeah, listen, I remember. So even before that even predated the Orchard, you know, that was the label. But in my mind, there were like two really defining moments. You tell me if you remember this the same as it's how I remember it. So first was, we met a company called Thinking Pictures in like 1995, 96, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they had this idea that they could take films and digitize them and beam them directly into movie theaters, into cinemas, so that people wouldn't have to have the big, you know, reels and showing movies on reels. And to me, that was like, wow, that's mind blowing. I can see where, if you can do that for film, imagine if we could do that for music. You know, I have no idea who those people were, whatever happened to them.
We used to go to their office, and we were definitely into that.
And so, but that was like, for me, like truly eye-opening. And then the other I remember was while Chris was keeping the office, holding down the fort in New York, you and I went to a trip in '97 to London for
Yeah.
a digital event, because now we're thinking, we're doing these campaigns online and we're thinking digital. And then we went there and we heard a bunch of speakers. And I remember, this not because of my memory is good. I remember it because I still have a sheet of paper that we were writing on, that we were passing notes back and forth as people were talking. We were passing notes. You were trying to talk, and I was like, shh, there's speakers, just write. And we were writing back and forth. I have that piece of paper somewhere.
Really?
And it was the origins of the orchard. It was the idea. And I know when we came back to New York from that trip, I said to Chris, I think we have our $1 billion idea. And I was kind of flippant about it, but it became a $1 billion idea.
Yeah. No, it certainly did. And I remember that trip. And I do remember something else I said to you, because we've both been doing this. I said, listen to those people on stage. We can do that.
I
And
love
then
the
we wound up
arrogance.
going
We could
around the
do that.
world, once we got the orchard started, just talking about it. And I remember one thing, I think it was Atlanta, you were in a conference and said, there won't be any more records, no more CDs. It's all going to be digital. And people were booing and
Yeah.
throwing things. I mean, it was like the end of the world and the beginning of another.
Oh yeah, the beginning of people yelling at me. Yes. But
Yes.
But remember, so remember that London trip where
I do remember
came,
the London trip.
because there was other things that happened on that London trip that weren't work related. Because you had been to London your whole life, and or
Yeah,
at
I've
least
been
your whole
going from the
adult
early
life.
days of Sire
And you were teaching me, I was this younger guy, and you were teaching me all the tricks, like, okay, we took the overnight flight. Now don't go to sleep. We'll walk all day and, to get over the jet lag, and we'll go get dinner and a nice bottle of wine and all of this. And we got to the restaurant, and you looked at the wine list and you're like, this is amazing. Because being in London, everything is the dollar to the pound, everything's half price. Look at this bottle. We could get 2 of them, 3 of them. We didn't have that much money at the time. And then we ordered up all the wine. And it wasn't until the bill came, then we were like, oh no, it's not that it's half. It's prices in London are double what they are in America. Yeah. We're like, oh, now we're screwed.
An enormous bill, but a great dinner that we carried on and continued around the world for the next few years. Yeah. Even though we were short on money, we were never short on good wine and good food.
Somehow we always managed to have good wine and good food.
Yeah, we got through it. But then we started discovering record stores on the internet, right? And the record store, CD Now, Music Boulevard, and we wanted to get our records in their stores. And it turned out that they weren't really stores, they were just virtual storefronts, but we didn't even know that. We didn't know anything. We just started, but the interesting thing
but you also said something really important. We didn't know anything.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, and it's a lesson for anybody that does anything in growing businesses, you move forward. You think, you visualize something. And so what did we do? We asked the stores. I remember it's like a little kid, asks, so you can't take our records? We're going to sue you. No, that's not necessary. We can't take your records because we're not really a store. And you then ask the question, well, who supplies you? They told us, and you and I took a trip to Sacramento, but we flew we didn't have a car or even money to rent a car. So my friend George had a Volvo, not a Volvo convertible, and he lent us the car and we drove across Napa.
Totally forgot. That was a great trip.
Yeah,
Forget about the business side. Rented, borrowing your friend's Volvo and driving across Napa and Sonoma Valley.
Yeah. Well, again, this is, I think, an interesting story for the growth of a business. We get to Valley Entertainment. They were the largest one-stop distributor in America. And we tell them, we know what you're doing. We're going to bring you all the independent music in the world. How many artists do we have?
None.
That's
3.
right, none, 0. So it's like anything in the music business at the time. But what did they do? They wanted to talk to me about all the other stuff. And they kept talking, and I told them about CBGBs, the Strange Loves, I Want Candy, and Sire. And finally, they said to us, we like you two guys. You're one of us. And they made us the exclusive distributors, suppliers to them of independent music. And it's a good lesson because it paid the past. Well, you don't want to live in the past. You can't recreate it, but it serves as a benefit to people who get a better understanding of you. And the interesting thing about the Orchard too, from those beginnings, when we finally did go back and build a miniature duplicate, or Chris and you, Chris Apostolou, built in the basement of our Orchard Street, a duplicate Valley Media.
Yeah, because it's important to know that in the early days of online music, we're talking 1997, 98. It meant CDs that were shipped, and that was already a miracle, because how many different titles could a store hold? But these online stores held infinite. I mean, it seems so obvious now, but back then it was magic. Like any album you could have ever remembered from your past, or some obscure album or a jazz album, you could type it into these stores, and then 2 or 3 days later it's shipped to your house. Like before Amazon Prime and all this was like almost like magic to people. And so the problem was, getting into those stores was no different than getting into a regular store. It'd be like, if you're an independent artist, like, no, you had to be signed to a label. The label had to have a distributor. You had to go through all that process. And we're like, well, why is that? How about if somebody made music, let's put it in the store. Why not? Let's open the floodgates. So in this world where you hear, 100,000 new songs uploaded every day into services like Spotify, what seems so obvious and natural today didn't exist. There was no way to get into retail. And we kind of, for better or worse, because some of it is worse, but for better or worse, we opened the floodgates and made it possible. And I'll add one last piece to that. And when we did that with the artists and the labels that said, we can get your CDs into the online stores, the first line or the second line of our, the first line of our agreement was, we'll fulfill your hopes and dreams. The second line was, and you grant us the digital rights.
And because we were the gateway to get into those stores, nobody really understood what it was, the right to store, develop,
to download, transmit digitally.
Correct.
People had no idea what this was. They were on like flip phones from Nokia and dial-up modems, and we're talking about digital rights. They had no fucking clue what we were talking about.
Right, but they wanted to get into these stores. They agreed, and we continued going to conferences. We continued trying to expand the presence of the Orchard. And all of a sudden, we go 4 years later, and iTunes opens.
That March 2003, it was more than 4 years.
Okay,
It was
so
a lot more. I mean, even in context, Napster, which was illegal, was 99. Like we're doing that, we're kind of envisioning this world before even Napster.
Napster, MySpace.
But MySpace. But remember,
mp3.com.
and yeah, Liquid Audio.
Yeah.
But I remember going to like conferences, there'd be music industry events like Midem in the south of France, in Cannes. and we would get a booth and we'd be trying to explain to people digital downloads to people that often didn't even have a computer, didn't have a computer. And we're trying to explain, you kind of landed on what cloud computing was before the cloud existed. You were like, imagine stuff up in the sky magically, because people go, I get it. I download it to my computer, but where is it? Where physically it must exist somewhere. And you were like, up in the sky.
Right. Well, Bob Dylan says there's a quote that he said, someone said, well, how do you get these great ideas if they're in the sky? How do you get the lyrics? How do you get it? You know?
So that's how people were getting, downloads in the early days, from the sky.
Yes. So,
But wait, can I throw in one more thing?
one more, sure.
Because I remember also, because it's all just coming back to me as we're talking. So we were at MEDEM. We didn't have any money. I don't even know how we got the flight tickets there, because this was,
No, I
to
had
put it
credit,
another,
but I had credit cards.
yeah, you had an
I
Amex
was- I
that we
was funding
exploded,
it with,
sorry.
yeah.
But the point of it was like having a business that distributes digital music in the 90s was not a money-making scheme. So we were quite poor and owed a lot of money. But I remember we go to MEDEM and we didn't have any money, but we started taking meetings we were staying at the Carlton Hotel.
Yeah.
We said to everyone, we'll take meetings in the lobby bar, which is quite expensive, like ridiculously expensive for like a beer or a glass of champagne. But we didn't care. We put everything on our tab, except we didn't put it on our tab. We signed it all to Richard's old partner, Seymour Stein's room, like for a whole week as we took meetings, and we go, oh, that's going to be $100 for a few drinks in a meeting. We go like, no problem. Here's a nice extra tip. Thank you. Seymour Stein, room 408. And it wasn't until he checked out that he realized it.
I might say that I didn't feel guilty about it because he owed me a lot of money. But I just want to say to everyone, we mentioned Seymour, but we say it affectionately.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the great music men of all time. He passed away recently, and a significant loss to not just the industry, but to the world. Imagine the wonderful things he accomplished at Sire Records and the artists that he signed. And
We'll say some of the art for
world
people that
we-
don't know. Richard's old partner Seymour those two started Sire. Say some of the artists he signed.
Oh, I won't mention Madonna, but I will. Madonna, Talking Heads, Ramones, Pretenders, on and on. I mean, Depeche Mode, just amazing things. And we started it together. And the interesting thing about that, the experience I got from the beginning of Sire helped us when we were developing the Orchard overseas and meeting people. We learned, because the beginnings of Sire were dealing with the global community. And when we started the Orchard, you and I sat around and we just felt music was a cultural experience that can be shared for everyone, not just about business, but the cultural experience of music recorded anywhere can be successful anywhere else because people reach into it. And the example of BTS, they're singing in Korean and people love them.
But back then, look, I learned so many lessons from you about all of this. Back then, people laughed at us.
They
Like,
laughed at us. It wasn't the way the business.
the ones that were angry, yelling at us, if it wasn't those people, was the ones laughing at us that this was a silly idea. Who wanted music from other countries? Like you have the UK and America and a few other peripheral, but this notion that Latin music would be a global sensation, that Europeans and Americans would be listening to Korean lyric songs, it was just not something that was worthy of anyone's attention. But you came up with this philosophy that said, all these people are kind of being ignored around the world, but the World Wide Web is global. So why don't we go where everyone else isn't? Like, meaning if the labels are all in America and the UK, then let's go to Estonia and Latvia, and let's go to Eastern Europe, let's go to Italy and Spain and all the places that no one cared about back then. And we started scooping up all of the
Well,
music.
remember, we opened a branch,
Mhm.
an office in Copenhagen.
Yes.
Well, there was a reason, but a personal reason for you. But besides which, it was closer to Eastern Europe. It was closer to Northern Europe. And the idea was that all this music had significance and value, even if it wasn't enormous financial value, the catalog value of accumulating it and the significance of being just part of this global music world was significant to the beginning.
And I think another thing that you said early on was, and it's because, like, I don't come from a music background. I don't know what background I come from, a house painter background, but my background, I was never a musician, but you were always, as a musician yourself, a songwriter and a piano player and a drummer. If you haven't seen Richard drum, you're missing out. And a producer, you were always like, if songs are created and recorded, everyone deserves an opportunity for it to be heard. It doesn't mean you're going to get rich. It doesn't mean anyone's going to listen, but you shouldn't be restricted from the opportunity. And so that kind of always stuck with me. And part of going around the world was giving people that thought they had no opportunity to say, look, you made an album. I understand you're in a country singing in local language. Maybe no one will hear it, but let's put it out there to the global stage. Again, seems obvious today, but before we started doing it, it would have been impossible. There was just no one there. I was in a meeting, I don't know, today or yesterday, and somebody was saying, oh, Scott and Richard were early in this space. And I was like, we weren't early, we were the earliest. Like, we were the first. There was, before us, it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, no, it was, and I'm sort of sad to say that for like the first, it ruined my listening experience of music, because when we were putting all this music out, for the first maybe 4 years of the Orchard, I wouldn't listen to any of it. Because in my mind, everybody had the opportunity. Didn't matter if you were good, bad, or indifferent. Technology made it possible. You should have the opportunity. After a while, I went back to listening and found that some things were more worthy than others, but everyone was worthy to a degree.
Yeah.
And
And in the end, it's what paid off, because as we were collecting all of this music, gallivanting from country to country, charging up things on Seymour's account, unbeknownst to him. By the way, he never found out. Like, we never had an opportunity to tell him, unless you told him.
No, I didn't, but
I never told him.
I hate to say this, because a former employee of yours, he worked within the Warner's organization and probably was putting that all in his expenses.
Yeah, it was probably on the Warner expense account. So Warner, a big shout out for helping us grow. But where was I going with this? I don't even know anymore.
Oh, anyway, we don't have to belabor it, but eventually we did get money in by signing some artists. One was Mankind Liberation Front.
Yes,
RCA,
love them.
We got money. And then you found a band from Denmark, the Ravenettes.
Yeah, that was huge, because they did a big, Richard and I were managing them. And that actually, they signed a massive deal with Columbia Records, Sony. And we used all of our commission money to help launch, to dump it right back into the Orchard. But But now I remember all that gallivanting around the world and collecting all these rights. The payoff was in March 2003
Yes.
with the launch of iTunes. And what happened then, first it legitimized what we were doing, because we would get like calls after that, like, have you heard of this thing where Apple lets you download songs for 99 cents? And we're like, yeah, I think we've heard of this. But in any case, when they launched, we were sitting on the largest catalog of
About
digital music in the world.
150,000 at the time.
Yeah, it was about a third of the iTunes music store were Orchard songs. And that was massive. And as were those checks, because we were so poor. And they literally would send us a check in the mail. They did it, no one had figured out you just put it in somebody's bank account.
I think at that point, we were in a position, I think I was on the board of a company and the people who were running that said, oh, we're taking on three other investments. So I said, why don't you look at the Orchard? And the investment group did invest in the Orchard, and
Dimensional.
with their help and management and financial help, we even went further and further and spent more time. And instead of dealing completely with artists, we went for labels, and we were able to develop further. And they were good people. They were investors. They did what they did. They put in a really good CEO at the time, a man named Greg Scholl.
Greg was great.
Who's
now the head of Lincoln Jazz at Lincoln Center.
Jazz at Lincoln
Greg.
Center. Yeah.
He was great.
I resigned as CEO and I became chairman. And so, which meant there was a title. And they asked, they said, well, something, we should have a London office. And I don't know how you volunteered or got shipped over there, but
Listen,
you opened up the London office.
I think we already had a London office with Jason Ojalvo.
Oh, we did.
But it was opening up more territories and expanding. So they came to me and were like, would you be willing to move? I'm like, within a month, I moved to London and never left.
I know, and you.
I'm still here now.
We stayed together. We stayed best friends. We continued operating businesses together. And you're London, and you're now settled down, properly married.
But now I'm also part London, but part Italy as well.
Well, yes, you look Italian.
Remember, somebody just put in the chat, a place to grow.
Yes. Oh, so that came to me in. I was taking a shower one day. It's at the Orchard.
You say a shower, but I know it wasn't.
Okay,
It was a bath.
A bath, right? A place to grow.
How many phones have you lost in a bathtub? But go on.
Really, but a place to grow meant not the orchard growing. I never anticipated that. I knew we were going to do well, but I never anticipated this. But it was a place for the artists that affiliated with us to enhance their career. Hence,
And why was that significant? Because of the street we were on and the history.
yeah, Orchard Street was originally, believe it or not, it's in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, was an apple orchard. And it was owned by somebody named Captain, I forgot his name, but he was a British
Delancey.
sympathizer during the war.
Wasn't it Delancey?
No, it wasn't Delancey. I don't think it was Delancey. It might have been, but
We
left
couldn't have
the-
Googled it then, but we could Google it now.
yeah, but he went back to Great Britain and left the whole orchard farm. And we committed to rebuilding the apple orchard once once we
You
had the money,
committed.
but we never got the money down there. So we forgot about it. And look, I mean, and the orchard continued to grow. The people who were invested in it, really contributed and managed the business in that way.
I think Tom wants us to move on to the next chapters, Warner and Jukebox. I know that because he sent me a side note.
Oh, okay. So All right.
You weren't done with Orchard, but he's done with Orchard.
Anyway, let me just say the Orchard did grow, and it's now run by some wonderful people. I'll name Brad Navin and COO Colleen White,
Nice.
Colleen Tice, and it's now part of the Sony organization. And Sony, I'm not saying this just because they are a great company, but they recognize the significance of it and allow it to continue to grow and operate. And the Orchard did pretty well for us, Scott. And
It did. It did great.
proud of
I
you.
would say one of the proudest moments I have was you actually wrote the Orchard theme song, which has never been recorded, but you would sing after a couple bottles of wine.
Welcome to the Orchard. Yeah, we did. We printed it because we were gonna have a theme song. Anyway, enough of the Orchard. Let's move on. So you left the Orchard and you joined Warner's, and you joined there as Chief Innovation Officer. And that was innovative.
Yeah, so I left the Orchard February 1st, 2019. By the way, when I decided to leave, I didn't have this set up. I kind of said, I'm done. And then, and I remember telling Colleen that I just wanted to leave, she's like, what, 1 year? How long? I'm like, I don't know, next 30 days, I'm done. And so she was gracious enough to put that in motion. And in that interim period, I started talking to Max Lusada, the CEO of Warner Music Group. He's a very charming guy, and he charmed me to come over and become the Chief Innovation Officer at Warner Music. So I retired on February 1st, which was a Friday, and started at Warner Music Group on Monday, February 4th, as the Chief Innovation Officer. And I have to say, I took it on because it was going to be a real challenge, because if the Orchard was building something from nothing, it was going to be working with Warner Music Group and taking something that's already huge and seeing if I can help navigate that into the future. But if I'm being truly honest about it, I actually think I failed. I failed at that mission. I think I didn't leave any real meaningful impact there. And if anything, I'm just kind of disappointed in myself. It's not because I told them years before about, my first day, I was trying to explain what blockchain was and NFTs, before people were aware of NFTs and all that. And I remember giving a talk to all the lawyers there about AI and the implications and what it was going to be in music. And now it's like a big thing and talk. So it's not that I didn't know what to do and what I wanted to do. I just felt at the end, it wasn't very effective. And maybe I'm just better suited to, building things, which is why I'm back into this world. I think when I look back, those early days of the Orchard, when we didn't have a roadmap, you couldn't have a plan because it didn't exist. So, it was more like you can have a compass, but not a map, so we know we wanted to go in that direction. We just didn't know how to go because it was uncharted. I think I like that world better than.
No, I can understand that. And the other thing is, you were dealing in trying to influence and change a corporate culture that it's understandable when you're of that size. It's like trying to steer a big ship. You just can't make the Titanic get out of the way of the iceberg. It's really hard, and sometimes the iceberg knocks you down, but also sometimes it might be a means of recognizing what's next. That iceberg is something you want to get over. But I'm sure you gave them some good ideas, and they're probably using some of them now anyway.
Maybe. Listen, I love the people there, and I love the colleagues. I love the artists. I loved everyone, the organization. There was nothing with that. It was just, I see Janet Kirker. She definitely has some experience there. She was over at Warner too. Yeah, it's a similar experience. Maybe it's that you need a certain personality type to be able to really operate in those large organizations.
You do.
And maybe I'm not that
truly
type.
do, and I'm not that either. So I've always been independent, but now I work for.
Yeah, you're actually part of a
the
big
orchard,
organization.
But, and I never had a different email. It was always richard@theorchard.com. Okay, so you leave Warner, and I remember I talked to someone who was talking about jukebox, and I said, "Wow, Scott." They asked me, and I said, "Oh, he'd be amazing. He could run anything, you know." So here you are at jukebox, JKBX jukebox.
Pronounced jukebox, yeah.
Jukebox. So tell us something about it, and what you're going to accomplish with that.
Yeah, well,
Orchard, like, I'm sure.
it is, listen, first of all, it feels very orchard-like. There's an amazing spirit at the company. Before I even tell you what we do, there's this like amazing people. And what's really interesting is we have the luxury of how we choose who comes to work there. And it always starts with values. Do they match our values? If so, you would be a good fit for us. So we start with people that believe in the things that we believe in about, you know, I don't know, transparency and work-life balance. And so we start with checking people. We do these kind of interviews, and people might not know that they're being graded on their value system, but we want people that have different values, because I think we can build a multi-billion-dollar company without destroying people's lives and grinding it out like a corporation. I think we can do that with just following an operating model, having a belief system, and making sure that we're all kind of taken care of.
I think that's really important. Beside the business aspect, that's critical. I mean, when you look at the orchard, the culture we built in that storefront still exists today.
Yeah, that's it.
The company, and that's part of what makes it successful. So that's something that you bring to Jukebox, and I think something that's going to contribut to it. But go into detail about.
All right, I'll give you more detail.
Yeah.
So on the highest level, just like you could buy and trade shares in Apple, Google, Amazon, imagine if you could trade shares in hit songs. So if you think about it, I mean, just think about music as an asset class. I mean, maybe you saw headlines like Justin Bieber sells his catalog for 200 million. Phil Collins and Genesis sold theirs for 300 million. Bruce Springsteen, The Boss, $500 million, $500 million. Now they're talking about Queen selling for over $1 billion. Like, this space is big, but the only people allowed to play in it are the three major labels, Warner, Sony, and Universal, the large equity-backed rights holders that have entered the space, like Hypnosis and companies like that. So what if regular people could also invest in those catalogs? Like, nobody offered me any shares of Justin Bieber. I'm not even a fan of Justin Bieber, but I know that's a good investment. So, but essentially one share was worth $200 million. What if we fractionalize that? So what we do is we work with those large rights holders. And they keep the copyrights, they own the copyrights. We take a piece of the revenue streams from those hit songs, from those hit artists, and we put those in a new company. We'll say an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. The purpose of this new company is to collect royalty streams. So if they say we'll put 5% of the royalty streams into this, we then take that company and to the SEC and get it qualified. Meaning we take revenue streams from songs and turn them into tradable securities governed by the SEC and FINRA. So it's like any other investment. It's a registered security, and now you can trade in it. And you think, well, how big could that be? So in America alone, 63 million Americans have individual investment accounts. So think like Charles Schwab, Fidelity, E-Trade, Robinhood, Webull, so they're trading. 63 million Americans are trading. They're trading $13.8 billion every single day. $3.5 trillion. And what are they trading? I'll buy one share of Apple. Maybe I can't afford a share of Google. I'm going to go on Robinhood and get a fraction of a share. Like, this is what they're trading. But if you were to ask them why, did they have some spreadsheet where they're doing an analysis why Apple is a good stock or what's going to drive its success? They don't know. But if you put music in front of them as an asset that they could invest in, they absolutely understand that asset. They go, that's the hit song. That's a good one. Not that one, this one. They absolutely understand it as an investment. And it is an investment that can sit in your investment account like it could be part of your 401k. And remember, when you buy these songs or they're revenue streams. So what happens? Remember that SPV, it's collecting those royalties and it keeps filling up and filling up. And when it gets too big, we're going to declare a dividend. And then it's shared with all the people proportionate to the number of shares you own. That's what we're doing.
That's wonderful. I think there's one other thing you're doing that's really admirable. You're considering, even though the artist or the writer is sold, I mean, you are doing that. You still recognize their right to something.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is, so we've established what we're calling the Creator Fund. And so
Great.
we don't, there's no royalty on this. There's no music being played. It's selling shares. So there's no royalty obligation. There's no royalty earned. I don't have a contract with songwriters and recording artists because they're not the rights holder. It's a label, it's a publisher. Somebody else has those rights. With that said, if people are trading in their stuff, shouldn't they be remunerated in some way? So we created this established this creators fund to say, you know what, you're going to share in the wealth too. Yep. You're going to, even though you might have sold your rights, you're still getting money on this. And we also won't even list anything on the site unless we get their consent. We won't put their name up there and say, hey, we have this artist. No, if they don't want it up there, we won't put it up there.
Oh, that's great.
So even though the rights holder says, but I want to list it, if the artist doesn't feel comfortable, we don't feel comfortable with it.
So when, well, if another thing I might just add, we've talked about it. Even with a team so far right now of 20 plus people, you've still more now. How many now?
I think we're at 35.
35. No office.
Still small.
Well,
no office. Oh,
no,
completely remote
office,
working.
Completely remote.
Yeah. We have people all over the world.
You do have quarterly get-togethers.
Yeah, we do on-sites, not off-sites. So we have no office.
Right.
I was, again, part of the values, if you ask people, how much do you love commuting to an office every day? Like, you must wake up, it's like, you know what, if you're comfortable where you are and you can open your laptop, great. We can still get together. I believe in people coming together, but this arbitrary commuting into an office because it's Tuesdays and that's the day we decided you have to come in. That's not for us. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not for us.
No, it's not for what you're trying to build. It's true. Here we're, I think, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Mondays and Fridays if you have appointments or something to do.
So I'm seeing like a ton of questions come in. One of them was, we must have a kick-ass COO, and we do, and his name is Sam Thacker, and our COO lives in Austin, Texas. Yeah, we had dinner with him in New York last week. And
you left, and I stayed there with Sam and those other people.
Oh, getting drunk.
5 grappas.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. The next day was like ridiculous.
No wonder he was off on all those meetings. But, but he put in like an operating model that just keeps us incredibly focused. I love working with him. All right, let me just there's a whole bunch of things. So
go through
there in various versions, people have mentioned blockchain. So let me tell you this. with the SEC in America, and we want to get these qualified as securities, nothing around crypto or blockchain is getting approved. So we've completely left that out.
Okay.
However, what we have done is we're mirroring what's called the share registry. So every transaction, like who owns a share and who doesn't, they buy and sell. We're mirroring that on the blockchain. So it's completely decoupled from the security itself. But it's like if you wanted to keep a spreadsheet of what transactions are happening, the SEC doesn't care. They don't recognize your spreadsheet, your Google Doc. They recognize the official share registry. But if you want to keep it, so we will. We're keeping all the transactions on the blockchain because we can then use that going forward. I guarantee you what we won't do with this blockchain is ever call it to any customer, the blockchain. We won't say the word crypto. We won't use coins, tokens, NFTs, like none of that belongs anywhere. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about, MP3 files and WMA files, and no, Apple uses AAC as their file format, and people knew all this. And that's when you know it's not mature. Now people just listen to music. What file format does TikTok use, or Spotify, or YouTube? I don't know, I click and music plays. And so we'll use blockchain technology because it can do certain things going forward that are NFTs. That is a tokenized economy, but nobody needs to know that. We just use it because it's going to be better. And we'll be able to create all kinds of things, again, decoupled from the security, but we'll be doing interesting things next year regarding that.
When will it launch? When are you
We're launching. No one, I can tell you that no one in the team wants me to ever say the date.
Not a
Like our
specific
chief,
date.
our chief comms
General.
officer, Jacqueline, she's awesome. And Jacqueline just don't say the date. And our chief legal officer, Scott Shipman, we're like, don't say the date, September 12th. September 12th, we're launching. Unless the SEC doesn't have everything approved by then, that's our launch date.
Okay. And you know what you're launching with?
Yes. I just won't, that we're not
That
revealing
you
yet.
won't talk about. Okay.
We won't talk about that yet. So here's a question. Will it be for smaller artists? In the initial phase, no, because you want to think of these as IPOs. So imagine like you own a chain of grocery stores. Maybe it's worthwhile to IPO those grocery stores. But if you own a little shop in the neighborhood for the local community, and you're not doing much revenue, but you have a nice shop and it's a business, it wouldn't make sense to go through an IPO, to do all the filings necessary, to do all the disclosure forms and all. It's just, and who would even invest in a tiny little store? So this is really, at this stage, meant for songs, artists with a sales history that you can look at. Because when you look at music, it kind of follows a pretty predictable decay curve that when a song is released, it zooms up, it has most of its sales. And then it starts to fall off pretty quickly. And then pick a number, 6 to 10 years, it kind of hits a floor. But then after that, year over year, it grows organically. It just grows. And then if you're lucky, magic happens and you're in Stranger Things and all of a sudden your song blows up again, or you get a big sync deal, or you go on tours where somebody re-records a song and it goes again. So, but it never goes to zero. It just kind of trails off and finds its new floor and then organically grows. So sorry, I'm trying to talk and read off that screen. So how many different artists will be able to invest? So there'll be, maybe, I'm trying to think how many in launch. Put it this way, there'll be hundreds of artists and thousands of songs, and these should be all household names. And this is an investment that you can sell. I'm just looking at some of the comments. It's if you can sell your shares in Apple, you can sell your shares in this. We have a marketplace like any other exchange, so that it will be a liquid market, because you haven't seen liquid markets in the NFT space and some of the others. I've learned a lot about finance these months because that was not something I thought I would ever have to know, but I've been taking reading all these books that people take so they can take their broker exams and all this. I am not becoming a broker, but there's something called market makers, which make markets liquid. So that for us, we work specifically one called GTS, which will allow that liquidity. Because if you're actually trading stock on the stock market regularly, if you have an account like a Schwab account, and you go, oh, I just want to sell some shares, and you think it's happening immediately, it's because there's a market maker in between there, a private company that says, I'll buy the shares from you because I know I'll be able to sell them later. And so they make markets happen. If you don't have a market maker in part of this platform, then people want to sell and there's no buyer. So they make sure everything is liquid.
So people will be able to trade it. They could keep it if they want, or
they can keep it because it generates a dividend payment. It has a yield. So you know, imagine if you can make 4% from music, because music as an asset class is an uncorrelated asset, meaning it doesn't matter what's happening in the economy. Doesn't happen. There could be a global lockdown because of a pandemic, and businesses can't operate and the economy goes under. But your song's played on the radio, you get paid. You listen to on Spotify, you get paid. It always generates money. It doesn't matter what's happening anywhere else. And it's historically outperformed the S&P 500. So it's a good stock to own.
well, again, you know, if you're talking to me, I think the song's everything, you know, and basically, you know, you make music, you produce records, you do all this, but you can't do it without a great song. And those songs have value, and they have value for decades. They cross generations.
Yeah, because they have they have the value because it means something to people,
It means,
but it has
Yeah.
financial value too. And you know, if you're thinking, you know, the next time you listen to music, you know, somebody's getting paid from that song. It's streamed on Spotify. You're hearing song in the gym or in the restaurant. You listen to radio for those that
right.
still have a radio. I don't know who has a radio, but if you were listening to a song on the radio, keep in mind, somebody's getting paid for that. Why shouldn't it be you? Why shouldn't you be the investor in that and get that money?
Okay.
That's the point.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I'm glad to see you're so enthusiastic and understand the issue so well. You know, can articulate it. I mean,
Well, I think I learned it's incredible. So from our, I don't know how long, since 95,
yeah, I don't know.
we've
We're
been
like
friends. How many years is that? It's almost 30 years, 28 years. First, I learned a lot from you. Then I started quoting a lot from you. Now I can't even remember the origin, but I know it's I hear your voice in my head. This is something Richard would say. So yeah, whatever I'm doing now, it's all credit to you. I mean,
Oh, Scott, thank you. But
no, seriously.
Now we'll get mushy. I think I think that when you go into business, or you just make a friend and you meet someone, somehow just the ingredients come together, you know. And I don't think we even had, like, over all those years, any extreme dispute about anything, about direction,
Never.
about friendship, about where
Never.
to go,
I don't think
or
we ever got into we bicker, but I don't think we ever got into an argument, ever.
no,
Did we ever get in a
never got
fight?
into an argument. And
Never.
and when you think about it, going almost 30 years, sometimes, you know, I'm looking at you now and thinking, where the hell did it go? You know?
My hair? Because when I met you, I had, oh, well,
You
that
went
was even
blonde
later.
hair.
Yeah, there was
You did. Oh, I'm embarrassing you, but you did.
there was a moment of blonde hair in there,
But
but
it was-
hair nevertheless.
Yeah, you did have hair. I had a little more hair too, but it is true. Anybody have anything else to say here?
But I think we have to wrap it up. Aren't we on time,
Yeah,
Tom?
we're
I don't know
pretty
how
much.
strict you are. There's so many
Where are you?
questions. Daniel Cartier is in there. I was with Daniel Cartier on tour with Consolidated when I became a vegan 25
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago.
You were, that's what
With
you,
Consolidated, and I
Yeah.
see he's in the chat.
I remember that, and I remember, you
And
are.
trust me, people on this call know who Daniel is without even knowing, but I'm sure you've seen his images. If you spent any time in New York, he was the symbol of the East Village back in the day.
Ah,
Think
okay.
about, remember those postcards where there was a guy, he's in the chat now with like kind of like tattoos on his head that was like, I don't know, Daniel, like Indian symbols, whatever, super cool. That's him. And he's on this chat right now.
Oh, well, I don't have the shadows. I'm just looking to see who's writing.
Well, gentlemen, let me jump in here. First off, this has been as amazing as I expected and hoped. You both are absolutely inspiring rock stars. You both see around corners. And Richard, without you, who knows where music distribution would be today? So kudos to you for just being a badass. And Scott, for picking up the torch and carrying it forward and all the cool things that you've done. I can't wait for September 12th. I'll be the first one at the window with my credit card in hand or whatever other means I have to do to transact. Richard, one question that was asked repeatedly in here is, will I Want Candy be investable in Jukebox?
Oh, well.
Let's figure this out, Richard.
We'll talk about that. I think Sony Music is the publisher. We still have the writing, so that scale of it, and we're partners with Legacy on the master. So would I Want Candy be in?
Let's do the writer shares the easiest, but if not, yeah, let's do the writer share of I Want Candy.
I'm in.
All right. If you like I Want Candy, great. I'm willing to do it for you, Tom.
Well, listen, you guys are incredible. I can't thank you enough for the music and for the technology and just being simply awesome human beings. So, audience, you got yourself a treat today and you've been rewarded. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom, for putting this together.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate it.
You guys take care, stay safe, and be nice to each other.
Thanks, Richard. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, I'll speak to you probably right after this. I'll call you.
Come over for a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao.